The Jazz have a new president of basketball operations. What's going to happen? Are things going to change? Am I freaking out? Let's talk about it. It's the Hoops Nerd Show. All right, guys. So before we get into this, I just got to say thank you for bearing with me this summer, but it definitely appears that things are about to get even more crazy for this Utah Jazz team. The draft isn't even here yet, and the Utah Jazz just made a massive change with hiring Danny Ainge, son of Danny Ainge. This is a crazy move, to be honest. I mean, I guess it's not that crazy. It's crazy in that I don't think anyone was expecting this. Maybe they were behind closed doors. If you read Sarah Todd's article about this, it's really great. Provides some insight. But there's some things that no one can really know. We don't really know exactly what's going to happen. We know what probably some different parties within the Utah Jazz front office would like. And I guess I have a lot of different thoughts. Let's just start from the top. I'm nervous. I am very worried that this Utah Jazz team is going to go back to some of the habits of yesteryear, in the times of Greg Miller and the Utah Jazz front office and ownership that was not really worried about winning a championship, but they just did not like the idea of losing basketball games or having fans displeased with the direction of the team. I'm worried we're going to go back to those days, because if you were with me back then and lived through that and wrote about that and talked about that, it was miserable at times. We were in an era where the Jazz ownership was more worried about selling tickets in playoff games, like under Al Jefferson, those magical Al Jefferson years, than they were about building a championship team. And I know that for a fact. I have people that I know were involved with certain things back then. The decision-making was very short-sighted. And that's really what I'm worried about. Are we getting into short-sighted thinking? We've been told that this Utah Jazz team has a vision for the future, that they want a long-term window. They don't want win now moves. And what is frustrating for me, and you know, I got to say, there's some things that I'm actually really interested in and hopeful about. But one of the things I'm nervous about is that we've been told they want a long-term window. And then we get rumors and reports of things that did not suggest that. Last offseason, Utah went big game hunting. And the big game hunting they ended up doing, that we heard reports from multiple places, was Mikal Bridges. Now, Mikal Bridges was on a New York Knicks team that was in the Final Four of the playoffs, but we've got to remember that is a Knicks team that is, first off, in the Eastern Conference, the junior varsity conference. They already have a set of core stars. They already knew that Jalen Brunson was a star. Now, you could argue how much of a star he is, whether he's top 10, top 15, whatever, but they did have an established team. And then they made a trade to kind of fill in the gaps with that team, and it worked out to some extent. What did Utah have that was ready to take things to the next level? Yes, they, had a surprising start post Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert trades. But anyone that thinks that team was anything more than a late lottery team is delusional. And what makes me worried is I am a little worried, is the Utah Jazz owner delusional? That's what I'm worried about. Are we Greg Miller, or are we an ownership that lets teams like general managers like Sam Presti run the show? Which one are we? Are we the Kings? Are we the Bulls? I don't know. Makes me nervous. I hope not. I hope we're a team that has some vision for the future. I hope. I know that this offseason didn't go the way everyone wanted, but I tell you what, this what makes me worried about it being a little short-sighted was everything just dependent on this lottery? If so, that's pretty short-sighted. Because win or lose the lottery, Utah was still in need of a process. I don't know what this means for the process. That's the thing. And maybe that's the answer is we don't know. Maybe I have nothing to be worried about. Maybe this will just go perfectly. Maybe Ryan Smith and Austin Ainge have a very clear vision of what they want to do in the future. But the quote from the press conference today that was interesting was when one of the reporters asked, or one of the people in the media room asked, they did say the word tanking. He asked, like, I should play the video clip. You can go look it up. But basically saying, will there be tanking? And then he goes on to ask, or manipulating of lineups to lose games. And Austin Ainge said, no, we won't be doing that. And while he says it, you can watch Ryan Smith's face, and he smirks about it. Now, maybe that's nothing. I'm just reading body language. All I'm given is what the Jazz choose to portray and choose to say in those press conferences. Now, there are times where they say things and do another. I don't know. And I guess what is tanking then? Is that what the definition of tanking is to someone like Ryan Smith? Is just manipulating lineups so you don't win the game? Well, that's fine, and I can agree with not having to do that, but you got to have a little more vision. My biggest question for Ryan Smith and this Jazz front office is, can we actually do this right for once? You can lose games if that's the goal, or at least develop young talent and not tank and still get a good pick in the draft. It's really what you should do. The thing that has been the most frustrating these last 3 years now is the Utah Jazz have refused to clear the deck and go full in on their youth movement. They've refused to do it, and someone in the front office is keeping them from doing it. And I have a sneaking suspicion it is Ryan Smith. I could be wrong. This is just me speculating. But the last 3 seasons, the Utah Jazz have held on to veterans when at best this team was a late lottery team. At best, at very best, with everything going right. Potential play-in team, maybe. But they continued to hold on to these veterans. They continued to make weird, unnecessary signings. Why did the Utah Jazz re-sign Jordan Clarkson? You know what Utah could have done if they'd have just wanted to lose these games and just play to win? Is not sign players like Jordan Clarkson. They have Colin Sexton under contract, John Collins. The John Collins trade, looking back, is one of the weirdest moves I've ever seen. What was the point? Yes, you got him for nothing, but it made no sense. And if the Jazz are going into this upcoming season and wanting to play to win games and not manipulate lineups and let things go as they will, and that's what Sarah Todd mentioned in her article, it sounds like that's what Austin Ainge wants to do just at first glance at different quotes he's made. That's fine. But can we please at least make some smart decisions and stop doing dumb contracts? Like that John Collins contract makes no sense at this point. Why did the Jazz do that? It makes no sense. John Collins is probably not going to be on the Jazz after this season. I mean, maybe the Jazz are just going to try to win now and re-sign John Collins to a long-term deal. I know from my own kind of little mini sources that I don't think he would like to be traded, to be honest. That's something I've heard that I definitely have some very clear, I know that's the case. So who knows? My guess is he's not going to be on the team next year. Why did the Jazz sign John Collins in the first place? It's been fun. He's a fun player. But what is the goal? This upcoming draft is one of the most loaded drafts in a long time. And no one knows that better than the Utah Jazz. AJ DeBonsa going to BYU. Cam Boozer, Carlos Boozer's son, is going to Duke. The Jazz just hired Carlos Boozer as a scout. Like, all signs point to the Jazz wanting to get a draft pick. But then they just kind of make these weird decisions. I completely agree that the Jazz should play to win games. It's not the question of should they play to win? Should Will Hardy be trying to win? That is not what it is. That is not the problem. The problem is a front office that keeps having players on the roster that don't fit the direction of the team. And that goes for Lowry Markkanen too. Utah was involved in a lot of trade rumors last offseason and re-signed Lowry Markkanen. And last offseason, the same smirk that Ryan Smith had on his face during this press conference is the one he had on his face, I'm sure, when he's telling people like Tony Jones and Tim McMahon that they're re-signing Lowry Markkanen. Well, guess what? That contract is a lot harder to trade now, and we just went through a whole season of Lowry Markkanen shooting 34% from three. Are we going to put Lowry Markkanen on the floor all season, shoot 34% from three, and send a number 10 pick to the Oklahoma City Thunder? Is that really what we want to do? The Thunder, who, by the way, are going to win the championship and are the model franchise showing how a small market, Oklahoma City, by the way, being a smaller market than Utah, is going to win the title and is on the verge of a dynasty. I hope Utah is looking at that and wanting to emulate and not saying, nah, I don't want that. I don't want championships. I don't want dynasty. I don't want banners. I don't want glory. I don't want rings. I don't want gold. What I want is the obscurity of the Sacramento Kings. What I want is the obscurity of the Chicago Bulls. That's what I want. No. Utah needs to do this right. The last 3 seasons have, we finally tanked. Finally, because they couldn't make the trades of the dumb contracts they shouldn't have done. We finally tanked successfully. And guess what? Anyone who says the lottery was not a success is wrong. Because guess what? The rumors are flying like crazy. I don't have enough time in the day to write about everything going on and all the rumors going on. There is going to be movement in the draft. Things are looking great for Utah. And it would not have been great like it is now had they not gotten the record that they did. Utah, at worst, gets to choose between VJ Edgecombe, Ace Bailey, and Trey Johnson. And let's say that's not even the trio they want. Let's say the intel behind closed doors is that there are other guys that are going to be better. Well, guess what? Utah 5 gets to choose. And even just now, I just saw a report that there is weirdness coming out. This comes from, what's his face? Hardwood Paroxysm. There is weirdness coming out of San Antonio that they're not super high on. There's some weird things going on with their pick of number 2. Dylan Harper, maybe he's not even for sure there, right? So who knows? And who knows? Maybe I'm anxious, guys. That's the thing. My first initial reaction to this was dread, a sinking feeling in my stomach, because if you're like me, you have been through the drudges. I was in the blog wars, right? Like, I feel like we're heading into like the Star Wars trilogy, the original trilogy. And I'm someone that was in the Clone Wars. I was in the blog wars. I know what happened. I was there when we drafted Alec Burks and we had all the hope in the world and then didn't play him. I was there. And I have the worst fear that we're going to go back to that. And it is not the path you want to take, guys. Believe me. For all you young Jazz fans, it is not the way. It is not the way. You know what I mean? I'm just going to be totally honest. When I was out there writing about that stuff and following that stuff closely and just do you know what it's like to write about a Ty Corbin team? It's horrible. It's horrible. I can't tell you how bad it can be. I hope the Jazz have championship aspirations. I hope they understand what it takes to get there. And Utah has been closer to being all in than I've ever seen them. but they still haven't quite gotten there. And every single move they've made has had multiple directions pulling. I mean, the first 2 seasons post Donovan and Rudy, it is inarguable that you had obviously different voices in the front office wanting to do different things. You had a team that goes into the season, and we get reports from Tony Jones that they think they're going to be pretty good. Well, I have a pretty good idea. I mean, they thought, and they were, you can't argue they were right. Utah started that season 10-3, and then it was a dive bomb after that. And then come trade deadline, they sold the house and were able to get the number 9 pick that was Taylor Hendricks. Now, they could have gotten a lot better pick had they just made choices sooner. We know that the Mike Conley trade they made could have been done much sooner. That offer was on the table, but there was just not a clear decision being made. I hope with this hire that the Jazz are going to make much clearer decisions. I know what I want them to do. You guys know what I want them to do. And let's just talk about it. We've got to stop making emotional decisions. We have got to make decisions that are purely based on what helps the Jazz work towards a championship. Lowry Markkanen's contract is not good. It is already in the top 10 lists on like national things I've been reading and listening to of one of the worst contracts in the league, and it's only going to get worse. He shot 34% from 3 last year. We can joke about how the Jazz thought they were going to get Paul George and then how he was terrible for the Sixers. Who knows what Utah would have done to make that happen? But you can't. The fact is, Paul George shot a better 3-point percentage than Lowry Markkanen did last year. 34%, guys. Our max contract player, Lowry Markkanen, shot 34% from 3, and he is a 3-point specialist. Why? And I don't want to hear all this makeup talk. Like, I was begging for that trade. I have the receipts. I told you guys so many times. Every rumor I talked about, it was so obvious. And so I'm hoping that someone in this front office can say, look, this is what we have to do. In the reporting, it's clear that Austin Ainge still reports to Ryan Smith, and that's how things go in the NBA. People don't realize that owners have much more sway in this league than they want to realize. It's why the teams with bad owners don't win, and the teams with smart, good owners do. This league is pretty simple. What the Jazz did last year was extremely successful. How they went about it, you could argue, right? You could argue that manipulating lineups to lose games wasn't the best way to do it. In all honesty, I would agree. You know what would have been better? Stockpiling more picks, like a certain team in Oklahoma City who used them to draft stars that is now going to the NBA Finals. And they used some of those picks once they had their star core set up to go get players like the center they got from the New York Knicks, right? They used a player they drafted in Josh Giddey to turn into Alex Caruso, who was vital in defending Nikola Jokic at times and doing other incredible defensive plays to help them get to the finals. But they don't do that if they don't have their core stars. I am really worried that Utah thinks that Lowry Markkanen is some sort of core piece, which he is not. He is not. Okay? I am fine being the heretic in the woods screaming at the top of his lungs. I'm fine. But I'm right. Okay? Lowry Markkanen, before he came to the Utah Jazz, had injury troubles, and I am scared to death that we think that this guy is going to be some sort of core piece. I have a sinking feeling our owner does, and is not looking at the empirical facts of what has been going on. He is not a good defender. He is not a two-way player. He is a shooter. He is an offensive off-ball player who shot 34% from 3 last year. That's just a fact, okay? So if I, myself, we do, Here's what you do. We go all young. In fact, you know what? I've been even as I guess radical as wanting to trade Walker Kessler because I wanted to lose those games. That's what I wanted to do to lose these games because it's that important. At this point, I'm okay keeping Walker Kessler. But we can't go into another season with players like John Collins and Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton and Lowry Markkanen who are not on a timeline for the Jazz that is going to be a championship team getting minutes. It doesn't make any sense. And so for Austin Ainge to come in and be successful, he has got to trade Lowry Markkanen, John Collins, Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, and anyone else that can be tagged with the term veteran, right? It's got to go. They've got to go. Stop signing guys like Svi Mikhailuk. Stop it. What are you doing? Don't. You know what you should be doing? Playing guys like Isaiah Collier, Bryce Sensabaugh, Keontae George, Trey Johnson if you draft him, Taylor Hendricks, Walker Kessler. Let those guys play. And you will do two things. You can play them. If they win games, great. Great. Then it means you have winning players. If you don't, then it's okay because you're working towards a top pick in the draft. It's not that complicated. Utah should have done this 3 years ago. Mike Conley should not have played a single minute with that team post Donovan and Rudy. It made no sense. And as soon as they saw they had a stud in Lowry Markkanen in terms of just being a most improved player, they should have traded him because it didn't fit. There was not a world where Lowry Markkanen was going to be on the Jazz at the same time they compete for a championship. And anyone who thought that if they go get and win the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, that a core of Cooper Flag and Lowry Markkanen was winning a championship, no, it was not. It's going to take a year. Cooper Flag is going to be awesome, but even Cooper Flag is going to take a year or two before he finds his legs in the NBA, at least as on a bad team as a core piece. That was going to take time. They were not going to win. So it was never going to be like that. So that's what they need to do. And if they do that and get picks back, and even if it means losing some of these trades, Utah does not have to keep this mantra of just winning the trade every time by you don't have to blow out the other team. If you just get correct value for a player so you can have your team hitting the goals that you've set, then that's great. I personally think the Utah Jazz are going to come out of this draft with two nice players. The number 5 pick in this draft, you know who wants the number 5 pick? Brooklyn does. Toronto does. Those are teams that really want that pick. Guess what? Utah got the pick that they all want. They'd all love to trade places with us. 100%. You know how I know that? Because I was so envious the last 2 seasons when we were in their same spot. What Brooklyn did this year is what we did the last 2 years. Won too many games. So, here's the other thought. I have a hard time thinking that Austin Ainge is going to be that much different than his dad. They worked together. I mean, even Austin Ainge mentioned it in their press conferences that they worked together for like 14 years. I'm sure that the influence of Danny Ainge is there. Now, he probably has his own ideas and own motivations and viewpoints of things. But if there's one thing he knows, it's probably that Jason Tatum was a core part of what made this Boston Celtics team win a title. And Jaylen Brown, finals MVP, right? Do the Boston Celtics win the NBA Finals without Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum? No, they don't. And I think no one would understand that better than Austin Ainge. So I'm hoping this is a continuation of the good things the Jazz have done and now a chance to remove all the nonsense. The veteran players playing minutes when they shouldn't. Making moves for guys like John Collins when it doesn't make sense. The other thing I think, this Jazz team may not have a choice. This would be a very silly season to try to go for it. And this offseason as well. For one, this is one of the worst free agent classes in a long time. In a long time. There are no free agents. And what that means, we know that there are 3 ways to build your team: draft, trade, free agency. I got the order wrong. Utah's not getting one in free agency. No one is, to be honest. Sorry, I got to scoot up. By the way, guys, just a side note, I replaced my solid state drive. I replaced my graphics card on my own. I even bought a new chair that I got to put together, but I didn't want to. I was lazy. Things are running great. Running great. I hope you guys are appreciating it. This Millennium Falcon is running a lot smoother these days. But anyways, no one's getting free agents because there are none. It's a terrible free agency class. Terrible. You're looking at end of bench kind of guys. You know, at best, maybe end of the starting lineup rotation guys. You're not getting game changer players. It's been reported already by Shams Charania, and it's basically, you know, I'm sure he's hearing things, but it also is just by looking at the actual NBA climate. With no free agents, a lot of teams out there are going to be extremely active in the trade market. A lot of teams want to win now. Utah's going to be competing with that. If they're trying to win now, yeah, they can probably beat out some teams because of their picks they've gotten from the Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert trades, but not by a lot. And there's going to be teams out there like the Houston Rockets who have a lot of great picks and a lot of good players. The San Antonio Spurs, who might be very active. The reports from San Antonio, they want to win now. That's why the Dylan Harper stuff is interesting. Maybe Utah can get to number 2 and get a core guy that way, right? Like, would the Spurs be interested in Lowry Markkanen for the 2 straight up? I don't know. I've been told by lots of reporters the last 3 years that Lowry Markkanen is the second coming of Chris Mullin. So maybe it'll happen. Or maybe they were just kind of trying to keep nice with their sources. But I don't think the Jazz really have a choice this offseason. They may just be bad. And so the smart thing is to just see what the climate is, what your team and assets are telling you to do, and go that way. And what they're telling you to do is that this is the best draft in a while coming up. Utah has a chance to really get a star, and not just if they're number 1 like this draft, or possibly 2, but you're looking at 3, 4, and 5 being great, you know? So it may not change a lot, and things might actually just improve. That's what I'm hoping. Me, the optimist. So we'll see. But I do have a sinking feeling. I'm a little nervous. But I will say that the NBA is a harsh, cold league. And sometimes what you want isn't what you get. You know, some of us go through life and things work out perfectly, and our tech company just explodes in ways maybe we never dreamed, and things just work out, and then you have money, and you're just able to bring over a player to BYU because you literally have the money to make that NIL happen, you know? And maybe you're able to bring over new players into your coaching staff like Avery Bradley, and maybe you're able to bring in Dwayne Wade and guys like that, and things just work out really nice. But when it comes down to the market and the NBA market, it's a cold world. And sometimes you're brought down to earth on a level where all of us are and have to live in that reality. And that reality sometimes means a lot of sacrifice. All right, guys, like and subscribe to the channel. I will talk to you next time.